Young blind girl was sold by her stepmom to a millionaire CEO. That night, the unthinkable happened. "Claire, you hear me, girl? Don't make me come up there." Margaret Hayes's slurred voice pierced through the thin walls of the rickety farmhouse like broken glass. Upstairs, Claire Donovan sat by the window, her face turned toward the wind, rustling the pine trees outside. She didn't move. She had learned silence was often safer. At 22, Claire lived in darkness, blind since a fever stole her sight and memories at 5. Her hazel eyes, lovely but unseeing, missed the meadows, the sunrise, and even the shadows of Willow Creek, Oregon, a town so small everyone knew what you had for breakfast. She spent every afternoon in the same spot, clutching a silver necklace with 2 pendants, one sun, one moon. It was the only relic from her past, something she couldn't explain but couldn't let go. Margaret called it junk, but Claire remembered the scent of lavender and a gentle hand fastening it around her neck once upon a time. The town pitied her. To them she was that blind girl in the window. They whispered when she walked by with her cane, eyes avoiding hers, never offering more than awkward sympathy. Kids stared. Adults crossed the street when Margaret came home, liquor on her breath and fury in her step. No one helped. No one cared. Margaret wasn't her mother. She was the foster assigned to Claire when her real memories vanished. Over the years, bitterness became Margaret's closest friend. Bitter words, bitter glances, bitter nights filled with the clink of bottles. Claire had long learned not to expect tenderness. Heavy steps climbed the stairs. Claire quickly tucked the necklace beneath her shirt. The door flew open. Margaret stood swaying, hair unbrushed, eyes wild. "I told you to fix the heater. You trying to freeze me to death?" Claire stood slowly, gripping her cane. "I was listening to the wind," Margaret scoffed. "Always dreamin'. That won't fix your life, girl." Claire passed her without reply. She'd learned it was better not to speak. The heater groaned like an old man. Claire knelt beside it, her fingers moving carefully across knobs and wires. Though blind, she knew every inch by memory. She hummed softly, a tune she didn't recall learning, but one that soothed her spirit. Margaret leaned on the doorway, sneering. "Think someone's coming to save you? Ain't no prince for a blind girl." Claire didn't flinch. Her dreams were never about princes, just a hand to hold, a voice that didn't yell, a place where she belonged. That night, the wind howled outside. Claire sat by the window again, forehead against the cool glass. She couldn't see the moonlight dancing, but she could feel it. Her fingers brushed the necklace beneath her collar. Somewhere out there, she believed, someone existed who could see her, not with their eyes, but their heart. Someone who'd speak her name like it mattered. A wolf howled in the distance, and softly, Claire whispered back, "I'm still here." The night held its silence, but it no longer felt empty. "You're going to New York," Margaret announced one foggy morning, her breath thick with the sour stench of leftover whiskey. She tossed a worn duffel bag onto Claire's bed. "Pack up, you leave tomorrow." Claire's fingers hesitated mid-stitch, her brow furrowing. "New York? Why?" Margaret exhaled loudly, already annoyed. "A job, girl. A real job. Some fancy company's hiring people like you. Disabled, whatever. Desk work. Good pay. It's your chance to get out of this dump." Claire's heart leapt, a spark of hope lighting up the darkness. "Really? You found this for me?" Margaret scoffed, waving off the question. "They needed someone, I gave them your name. Don't ask questions, just be grateful." She turned on her heel and stomped down the stairs, muttering under her breath about finally getting something back for all these years. Claire stood, running her hand over the old wooden dresser. New York. The very word felt like a dream. She'd never been beyond the outskirts of Willow Creek. A job, a future, maybe even friends. For the first time in years, the necklace around her neck didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a promise. The journey was a blur, Margaret dragging her from one bus to another. The hiss of brakes, the rustle of crowds, the city sounds loud and unfamiliar. At last they stood in front of a towering building of steel and glass that gleamed like a monolith in the morning sun. Sullivan Enterprises. Claire gripped her cane tighter, her free hand searching for the hem of Margaret's coat. "This is it?" Margaret said, sounding more sober than she had in weeks. "We'll take care of you now." Before Claire could ask another question, a well-dressed woman appeared, older, sharp-eyed, and commanding. "Margaret Hayes?" she asked. "That's me," Margaret replied, holding out her hand expectantly. The woman handed her an envelope. Claire couldn't see it, but she heard the unmistakable rustle of money being counted. Margaret's voice softened, almost reverent. "Nice doing business with you." Then she was gone, vanished into the bustling streets of New York without so much as a goodbye. Claire stood alone in the echoing lobby, her fingers trembling on the handle of her cane. The woman, who introduced herself only as Ms. Dorian, guided Claire wordlessly through a private elevator. "You'll meet him soon," she said cryptically. "The match has been made." Claire frowned. "What match? I thought this was a job." Ms. Dorian did not answer. When the elevator doors opened on the 40th floor, Jack Sullivan stood with his hands in his pockets, his tailored suit as immaculate as the skyline behind him. He was 30, rich, powerful, and thoroughly confused. He blinked, stepping forward. "I was told." She was a tech executive, a consultant. His voice dropped. "This is a joke, right?" Claire heard his voice and turned slightly, offering a polite smile. I'm Claire. I was told there was a job for me here." Jack looked at her closely for the first time, the way her hands gripped the cane, the lost tilt of her chin, the soft vulnerability in her posture. A blind girl, trusting. Dorothy Sullivan appeared behind him, her voice slicing through the tension. "She's the one. The prophecy said the girl born under the eclipse would save this family from ruin. Her arrival marks the change we've waited for." Jack's jaw tightened. "You set this up." Dorothy ignored him and turned to Claire with a softness that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're here for something far more important than a desk job, my dear." The next 24 hours moved like a whirlwind. Papers were signed, dresses were fitted. Claire, still unaware, believed she had entered into a contractual role, maybe a mentorship. No one explained the truth, not until she stood at the altar in the Sullivan Mansion's private chapel, hands shaking, veil draped over her brow, did she start to feel the dread. Jack stood beside her, stiff and furious. Dorothy's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant declared. There was no kiss. Later, in a cold bedroom she'd never seen before, Claire sat on the edge of a silk-draped bed, heart pounding. Jack stood in the doorway, his voice low and sharp. "I don't know what game you're playing," he said, "but you and I, we're married on paper. That's all. Don't expect anything else." Claire didn't answer. Her fingers reached up for the necklace around her neck, the only thing that made sense anymore. She hadn't found freedom. She'd been sold. The Sullivan Mansion loomed like a fortress of stone and silence, its marble floors echoing every hesitant tap of Claire's cane. She stepped across the threshold, led by a silent maid whose heels clicked with practiced precision, offering no words of welcome. "Your room is this way," the maid said curtly, guiding Claire through long hallways filled with the scent of waxed wood and cold lilies. Claire nodded, her hand brushing against velvet drapes and gold-edged doorframe. Everything smelled of wealth, of power, and none of it felt like home. Her new room was vast and cold, the bed too wide for one, the windows sealed shut. Claire turned her head as if she could see it all, but her world remained pitch black, her fingers the only map to understand her new surroundings. She had not seen Jack since the wedding ceremony. He had vanished the moment the officiant declared them husband and wife, leaving her in the hands of strangers. That evening, Dorothy Sullivan entered Claire's room without knocking. Her cane clicked sharply against the floor, her voice sharp and clipped. "You will behave with grace. You are a Sullivan now. That name carries legacy, not pity." Claire stood as straight as she could, her heart pounding. "I'll do my best." Dorothy snorted. Do better. This house doesn't need charity cases." Before Claire could respond, another voice broke the silence, smooth, mocking, female. "I see the bride of the hour is settling in." Vanessa Harper, tall and beautiful with a polished sneer, strolled in without invitation. "You're smaller than I thought, and blinder." Dorothy didn't intervene. She left, her cane tapping out a retreat. Vanessa circled Claire slowly. "So you're the one Grandma Dorothy dragged out of the woods, a prophecy bride. How romantic." Claire clutched her necklace instinctively. "I didn't ask for this." "No," Vanessa said, voice sweetly cruel. "But someone paid for you, didn't they?" The door closed behind her, and Claire sat heavily on the bed, her legs shaking. Alone again. Days passed in monotony. Claire learned the house by touch, memorizing each hallway, each doorframe. No one spoke to her unless necessary. Meals were eaten in silence. Jack never came to her room. She only heard him from afar, his voice low in phone calls, the click of his shoes as he left early and returned late. One afternoon, Claire heard him outside the library and mustered the courage to speak. "Jack?" He paused. "I know you didn't want this," she said softly, standing just beyond the threshold. "Neither did I. But I'm here." Silence stretched for a beat too long. "I have meetings," he said, and the footsteps continued. That night, Claire cried quietly into her pillow. Her fingers gripped the necklace, the only thing that still felt like hers. She traced the sun pendant, then the moon, remembering the vague outline of a promise someone once made to her, long ago. In Jack's study across the house, he stood by the fireplace, staring at a locked drawer. Inside it was his half of that same necklace. Just the sun. He had kept it all these years, since that summer with Sunny, the girl he'd promised to marry beside a lake under the stars. She had vanished after a fire, her family presumed dead. He had mourned her ever since. The girl in this house, the blind bride he barely looked at, she was not Sunny. Could not be, and yet, every now and then, when she spoke, when she stood there so still and quiet, he felt something. Guilt, perhaps, or something else he refused to name. Claire knew none of this. She only knew the weight of being unwanted, the whispers behind her back, the smirks from Vanessa, the way the maids moved around her like she was furniture. She was married, but alone, a ghost in a palace of glass and gold, and every night she whispered the same words into the dark. "Someone, please see me." It happened on a quiet morning, the mansion heavy with its usual silence. Claire sat in the sunroom, her favorite spot, where light and warmth brushed her skin. Her fingers glided over the braille pages of a book, but her thoughts wandered. She reached for the necklace she always wore, sun and moon pendants, but her fingers met bare skin. She froze. Her hand searched her chest, the cushion beside her, the floor. Nothing. "Where is it?" she whispered, panic rising fast. She tore through her room, heart pounding. Pillows flew, drawers emptied, but the necklace was gone, her last link to a past she barely remembered. Across the mansion, Vanessa stood before her mirror, holding the necklace up to her neck. It gleamed under the chandelier. She smiled to herself. "Perfect," she said. Greg Foster, Jack's assistant, hovered in the doorway, uneasy. "You said you just wanted to look." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Greg. This necklace is the key. To what, lying to Jack, pretending to be Sunny?" "She gave him this," Vanessa said. "He's been obsessed with her since. If I'm her, I get it all." Greg hesitated. He owed Jack, but the life Vanessa promised was tempting. Slowly, he nodded. "What do you need?" "Details. Everything Jack's ever said about Sunny. I'll make him believe." So began the deception. Vanessa memorized Jack's childhood stories, games by the lake, a promise under the stars, the necklace he once gave her. She waited until the perfect moment. One rainy evening, she entered Jack's office, her voice soft. "You gave me this, remember?" She held up the necklace. Jack's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" "It's mine," she whispered. I'm Sunny. He stared, breath-catching. The necklace, the scar she claimed from a childhood fall. It all fit. His heart twisted. "Sonny?" he echoed. She nodded, teary. "I was afraid to come back." He hugged her. It felt like embracing a shadow. He wanted to believe, but something was off. Her eyes lacked the warmth he remembered. Her voice sounded rehearsed. That night, as Vanessa settled into the room next to his, Jack stood in the hallway, eyes drifting to Claire's door. He thought of her that morning, how she had fumbled at her neck, her face pale with panic. He almost asked what was wrong. Instead, he left a warm cup of water by her bed. Days passed. Jack rarely saw Claire, but when he did, something in him stirred. She walked slower now, hands tight at her chest. She never asked for anything, never smiled. He started noticing the little things, leaving cough syrup when she sniffled, quietly moving furniture out of her path. One night, he stood at her door and watched her sleep. Her brow creased even in dreams. He wanted to smooth it away. Claire never knew, but Jack felt it. Vanessa had the face of the past, the stories, the necklace. Claire had none of it, but when he was near her, he felt more human. One stormy night, Jack sat alone in the library, staring at the matching sun pendant he'd kept all these years, the one that should have answered everything, but it didn't. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't see Vanessa. He saw Claire, reaching into the air, searching for what had been stolen. His chest tightened. Something was wrong. Something did not fit. It began with the nausea. Claire had brushed it off as stress or nerves. After all, living in the Sullivan mansion under constant scrutiny was enough to make anyone sick. But then came the fatigue, the strange aches, the change in her sense of smell. The realization crept in slowly, like a fog. She waited until late one night, when the halls were quiet and Vanessa was away at a charity gala with Jack. She sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers pressed to her stomach, and whispered the words aloud for the first time. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire did not know what to feel. Joy? Terror? Both swirled within her. The baby was Jack's, that much was certain. It had happened that first night, the one Dorothy had orchestrated like a twisted ritual. She had tried to forget it. But now, it had left something behind. A life. Claire debated whether to tell him. He was cold, distant, devoted to a woman who had stolen her identity. But despite all that, something told her Jack deserved to know. 2 days later, she found him in the conservatory, alone for once, reading a file. She stood in the doorway, her heart pounding. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. He looked up. "Claire?" She took a step forward. I'm pregnant." The words fell like glass on marble. Jack stared at her, blinking as if he had misheard. "You're what?" "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her voice trembling. "It's yours." Silence stretched between them. Claire waited for rejection, for anger, for disbelief, but none came. Jack simply sat there, stunned, his jaw tight, his eyes unreadable. Finally, he stood, walked to the window, his hands were clenched at his sides. "Does anyone else know?" "No," Claire said, "only you." He turned back to her, and something in his expression had changed. The sharpness was gone. There was a flicker of something else. "I'll take care of it," he said. Claire frowned. "Take care of what?" "You," Jack replied, "and the baby." He did not touch her. He did not smile. But the next day, there were prenatal vitamins on her nightstand. A doctor's card tucked under her door. A quiet knock before dawn, Jack, offering to drive her to the clinic himself. It was awkward, those early appointments. He said little, sat beside her in waiting rooms, flipping through magazines he never read, but his presence was steady, and it mattered. Vanessa noticed the change. "What's going on with you lately?" she demanded one afternoon, cornering Jack in his office. "Nothing," he replied, eyes avoiding hers. "You've been distant," she accused. "Cold." Jack looked up, then. "You said you wanted a future, so let's not ruin it with drama." But the truth was, the lie weighed heavily on him. Every time Vanessa said, "Remember when?" He felt like he was betraying the woman down the hall who never once asked for anything. One evening, Jack passed Claire's door and paused. The light was off, but the door was ajar. He stepped in quietly. She was asleep, curled on her side, her hands cradling her belly. Her face, usually tense, was peaceful. The pendant she always wore glinted faintly on the pillow beside her. Jack stood there, unmoving. Something twisted in his chest. He walked over. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. Her skin was warm. He did not know why he did it, but for the first time in years, he felt something real. He left a small gift beside her, a pair of soft wool slippers, nothing expensive, just something warm, something thoughtful. In the hallway, Vanessa watched from the shadows, her jaw clenched, her mind already spinning. She would not let this ruin her plans. But inside that room, Jack Sullivan stood for a long moment, staring at the woman he had wronged, the child he had unknowingly created. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, the prophecy had been right all along. He just had not known where to look. The grand chandelier sparkled above, casting glittering reflections onto the marble floor as guests mingled throughout the Sullivan mansion. The dining hall was filled with soft laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the murmur of business conversations dressed up as social pleasantries. Claire, dressed in a soft lavender gown that Dorothy had insisted she wear, stood silently by the dessert table, her cane lightly tapping the floor beside her. She was there, but not truly present. Most guests ignored her, while others offered brief, pitying glances before turning away. She had learned to fade into the background. It was safer that way. Until the glass slipped. Claire's hand, unsteady from fatigue, brushed a crystal goblet that teetered on the edge of the table. It fell with a shatter, water spilling across the floor like a silver ribbon. The room quieted. Vanessa was the first to react. "Oh, for God's sake," she snapped, striding over in heels that clicked like accusations. "Can't you do anything right?" Claire opened her mouth to apologize, but her voice caught. Vanessa's hand gripped her arm tightly, her nails digging into Claire's skin. "Come on," she hissed. "Let's clean you up, away from the guests." Claire nodded, trying to steady her breath. She followed, her cane forgotten in the shuffle. Vanessa led her toward the hallway, her touch tightening. They stopped near the top of the grand staircase. "Just hold on to me," Vanessa said sweetly, her tone suddenly soft and caring, too caring. Then, without warning, Vanessa's hand shoved hard against Claire's back. The world tilted. Claire's body twisted in the air, her hands reaching for nothing, the hem of her gown fluttering like broken wings. She tumbled down the steps, her head striking the railing, her arms instinctively wrapping around her stomach. She landed with a sickening thud, her body crumpled at the bottom of the staircase. Gasps erupted from across the hall. A scream followed. From the second-floor landing, Jack stood frozen, having seen everything. "What did you do?" he roared, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. He bolted down the stairs, past the horrified guests, past Vanessa, who stood frozen in feigned shock. Claire was barely conscious, blood pooling beneath her. "Call an ambulance!" Jack shouted, cradling Claire's body in his arms. She whimpered weakly, her hands still gripping her belly. The baby. Jack's throat tightened. He held her closer, trying to steady the tremor in his hands. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, more to himself than to her. At the hospital, time warped into long, breathless stretches. Doctors rushed her into emergency care. Jack paced outside the operating room, his hands blood-stained, his jaw clenched. Vanessa had tried to follow, but he stopped her cold. "Don't you come near her again," he warned, his eyes blazing. "You think I pushed her?" Vanessa gasped, eyes wide with faux innocence. "I saw you," Jack growled, "every second of it." Vanessa's face hardened. "It was an accident. You're done," he said, his voice low, final. An hour passed. A doctor finally emerged, his expression grave. "She's stable," he said, "but I'm sorry. We couldn't save the baby." The words shattered something inside Jack. He stepped into the hospital room quietly. Claire lay still, pale against the white sheets. Her hands rested over her stomach. The necklace she never removed lay tangled on the pillow beside her. She turned her head slowly as she sensed him enter, her eyes dry but empty. "I'm sorry," he said softly, his voice cracked. Claire did not answer. He moved to her side, sat down, took her hand gently in his. "I saw what she did," he continued. "I didn't stop it. I failed you." Her lips parted, barely a whisper escaping. "I lost everything." Jack felt tears sting his eyes. "Not everything," he said. "I'm here, and I swear to you, Claire, I'll make this right." But she only turned her face toward the wall. The child was gone, and with it, so much of her fragile hope. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and cold against the window. Inside the room, silence sat heavy between them. A silence built not just of grief, but of everything unspoken, the betrayal, the lies, the pain. Jack remained by her side long into the night, holding her hand even when she let go. The house was too quiet. The Sullivan mansion, once filled with the echo of high heels and the clink of crystal, now breathed with the weight of grief. Claire moved like a ghost through its halls, her hands brushing along the cold walls, her heart heavier than it had ever been. Jack found her on the veranda, wrapped in a thick shawl, the early morning fog curling around her like misty arms. She did not turn when he approached. Her necklace glinted softly in the gray light. Sun and moon nestled together over her chest, as if mocking her. "Claire," he began. "Don't," she said quietly. He stood beside her in silence. For a long time the only sound was the breeze rustling the trees beyond the garden. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything, for not seeing you, for not protecting you." "I don't need your pity," Claire replied, her voice low but steady. "I needed your honesty, your trust. But you gave those to her." Jack exhaled. "I was wrong. About everything. I lost everything," she said, turning to face him, "because you chose her." His heart cracked at the emptiness in her voice. "I didn't know." "He didn't want to know," Claire interrupted, a bitter edge in her tone. "I told you she hated me. I begged you to listen. You chose her over me, over our baby." Tears gathered in Jack's eyes, but he blinked them away. "I want to make it right," he said. "Whatever it takes." Claire pulled a folded paper from her pocket and held it out. "A divorce," she said. "It's already signed. I want out of this nightmare." Jack stared at the paper, the black ink a cruel contrast against the white page. He shook his head. "No." Her brows furrowed. "What?" "I'm not signing it," he said. "Not until I fix what I've broken. You can't fix this." "Maybe not," he said, voice cracking. "But I'll die trying." Inside the mansion, Vanessa seethed. She had heard whispers, saw how Jack no longer looked at her. He was slipping away, and Claire was still here, still breathing, still in his heart. It enraged her. So she turned her attention to Dorothy. The old woman was weaker now, her health faltering. Vanessa brought her tea in the mornings, smiled sweetly, massaged her shoulders while whispering about how much the Sullivan name meant to her, about how devoted she was to Jack, about how Claire, a blind stranger from nowhere, had brought nothing but ruin. "Let me help you protect the legacy," Vanessa purred one evening. "You can rewrite the will. Jack will come around. He just needs a little more time." Dorothy, frail but shrewd, gave her a long look. "You're very persistent," Vanessa smiled. "I just want what's best for the family." But not everyone was convinced. Greg Foster, Jack's longtime assistant, watched Vanessa with growing unease. He had helped her before, fed her stories, stolen the necklace. But the miscarriage had shaken him. The night Claire nearly died, something had shifted in his gut. He began digging. Quietly, carefully. He reached out to someone from Claire's past, a contact she had trusted in Willow Creek. Through whispers and online records, he uncovered fragments of Claire's life, her foster mother's lies, the stolen necklace. He even found an old photo, worn but undeniable, a little girl in a summer dress by a lake, wearing a necklace with a sun and moon. Greg stared at it for a long time. He tucked it into an envelope, added a note, and sent it to Claire. It was time someone told her the truth, because the storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. It was past midnight when Jack heard the knock on his office door. He looked up, bleary-eyed, as Greg Foster stepped inside, his face pale, hands shaking slightly. He held a file pressed tightly against his chest like it might vanish if he let go. "I need to talk to you," Greg said. Jack sighed. "Now?" Greg nodded. "It's about Claire." The name sent a jolt through Jack's chest. He stood. "What about her?" Greg placed the file on the desk, slowly opening it to reveal a worn photograph, yellowed at the edges, a little girl, no older than 5, smiling at the camera. Around her neck, a necklace with a sun and moon pendant. Jack's breath hitched. Greg handed him another paper, medical records, a missing child report, and a letter from a private investigator, all pointing to one truth. "She's Sunny," Greg said softly. "Her name was Emily Langley. She was kidnapped when she was 5. Fever wiped her memory. Margaret Hayes raised her in Willow Creek under a false name. That necklace? Her father gave it to her before she vanished." Jack staggered back into his chair, the weight of the revelation knocking the air from his lungs. "She was right here," he whispered. "All this time, and I—" Greg looked at him, guilt etched in every line of his face. "I helped Vanessa. I thought I was helping you, but I was wrong." Jack's hands trembled as he picked up the photo again, his eyes fixated on the little girl who once ran barefoot through the grass, laughing under the stars. He remembered her eyes, those hazel eyes, Claire's eyes. His chest cracked open. Sunny. She was Sunny. The next morning he was at Claire's door before the sun had risen. He knocked once, then again, no answer. He opened the door gently and stepped inside. Claire sat by the window, her head turned toward the sound of his footsteps. She didn't move, didn't speak. He knelt beside her. "I know," he said, his voice hoarse. "I know who you are." Claire's fingers tightened around the pendant resting on her chest. "You're Sunny," Jack continued, tears streaking down his cheeks. "They stole you from me, from your family, from your life, and I didn't see it. I saw you every day and I didn't see you." Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the twin pendant, the sun. He placed it next to her moon. Together they gleamed. "I gave this to you when we were kids," Jack said, "and I promised you forever, under the stars. I promised I'd never let you go." Her breath hitched. He cupped her hands in his. "Let me make it right," he whispered. "Let me love you the way I should have from the beginning." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, Claire reached up and took off her necklace. She placed it in his palm. "Then keep your promise," she whispered. 3 months later, Jack guided Claire off a private plane in Switzerland, where she had undergone a complex, high-risk surgery with some of the world's leading ophthalmologists. He never left her side. He helped her walk, read to her at night, and when the bandages came off and the first rays of sunlight touched her eyes, she blinked through tears, finally seeing the world she had only imagined. She saw Jack, and she smiled. 1 year later. The Sullivan mansion, once cold and silent, now echoed with warmth and laughter. Claire, now fully Emily Langley, stood barefoot in the nursery, one hand resting on her swelling belly, the other gently brushing the edge of a mobile hanging above the crib. Moons and stars spun slowly, catching the golden afternoon light. Jack entered the room, holding a glass of warm milk. "For you," he said. She turned, eyes bright, smile soft. "For us," she corrected. He stepped closer, resting a hand over hers. "And for them," he added, glancing at her stomach. They stood in quiet joy, the pain of the past replaced by a future they had built, together, not from duty or fate, but choice. Claire had forgiven him. Jack had proven himself, and now a new life grew between them, not as repayment for suffering, but as a testament to survival, to healing, to love that had found its way home after being lost for too long. The necklace still hung by the window, its pendants bathed in sunlight. Sun and moon, just as it was always meant to be. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, we hope you will carry Claire and Jack's journey with you, a tale of love lost and found, of wounds healed by time and truth, of a necklace that led two broken souls back to each other. In a world where darkness once defined her life, Claire, now Emily, learned to see again, not only with her eyes, but with her heart, and Jack, lost in the echo of childhood promises, found his way home by finally keeping the one that mattered most. Stories like these remind us, even the deepest scars can become the maps that lead us to love. If you believe in the power of redemption, of second chances, of quiet strength and unseen beauty, then this is the place for you. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories now and never miss a moment that might just change the way you see the world. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep believing.